Hello everyone, it's Asata Games. Today we will learn about particles with Defold. This will be an introductory tutorial to the particles. During the tutorial, I will show you this fire particle and as well as that explosion. My main goal with this tutorial will be teaching you about the variables and other fields you can change with particles to create the effect you want and learn about it. Now, to create a particle on a folder, you can right click, new and particle. I already have fire, so I will go with fire to that particle. Now, if you press space, you will see that the particles are being emitted, and on the emitter we have a bunch of variables we can change, and we will try to recreate this fire particle. Now you can change the emitter name here. There is the position, rotation, and pivot. You can change the position of the emitter. You can move it around. For my case, 0 is fine. I won't change the rotation either. You can change the rotation. Now we have loop, and once is the play mode. If you set once, it releases particles, then waits for a bit before releasing them again. It releases the particles once with the duration you have set. Now it is looping because we are previewing it, but during the game, like the explosion, if you call it, it will be only played once. Since this is the fire, I want it to loop. We have size mode, I will set it to manual. We have the emission space, let me show you what it does. Let's go to the main collection. I have my fire particle here. If on it I press space, it is whirled right now, so if I move it around, you will see that the fire actually is affected by the movement. But on the emitter, if you set it to emitter and move it around, then it isn't affected by external movement. This is the difference. Now the duration is important when you set the play mode to once, but for the loop, it isn't important. You can set a start delay. Let's say you put 2 here and start the particles on the game. Then the game will wait 2 seconds first and call the particles after that. We also have the start offset. Now start delay and start offset are similar. If you set them to 2, then you will start seeing the particles after 2 seconds. But the difference is if you set the delay to 2, then the particles will start being emitted after 2 seconds. When the fire starts, you see that it starts small, then gets the full shape. Same with the smoke. If you set the offset to 2, then the particles will start being emitted, but after 2 seconds, you will start seeing the particles, so you will only see them when they are fully prepared, and you won't see the preparation phase. It may come in handy. You can set the image. There is already the built-in particle blob tile source, and I think the image on it is a good sprite for particles. You can have the material. I will use the default material. There is the blend mode, max particle count, change how many particles you can see at the same time. If I increase it, it will increase the max particle count, and you can see very few too. Now we have different emitter types. Circle, 2D cone, and box are 2D. Sphere and cone are 3D. You can set it to circle, so it will emit to all directions. 2D cone the triangular emission, and box is emission. You can change the size, so they will follow a straight path with the width you have set. Now if I change the perspective and go into 3D and set the emitter type to sphere. You will see that the particles are being emitted to all directions, and same with cone. It is on the 3D, and we will use box for this tutorial. Particle orientation is important, but since we are using a circle as the sprite, the orientation will not affect us. Now, inherent velocity is how much the emitter's movement will affect the particles. This takes values between 0 to 1. If I set this to 1, then the particles will inherit the emitter's velocity completely. If you set it to 0, they will not be affected. If you select stretch with velocity, then particles are stretched with their velocity since they are moving upward. They will stretch on the y dimension. But for small speeds, its effect can be neglected, so I will not turn it on. We have the span rate. This sets how many particles will be created per second. If you set it to 10, then only 10 particles will be created per second. 50 is good. Emitter size is 8 on the X, so I will set this to 25. Now we have a wider emitter size. I will not change the Y, and no emitter size Z, as we are using a 2D emitter type. Now particle lifetime is how long will a particle live. I will set this to a smaller value, maybe 0.5. Now this looks better, maybe 0.7. After zero point 0.7 seconds pass, the particle will disappear. We have the initial speed, how fast the particles will move, set it to 10 and they will not move much. It looks like a water effect at the bottom of a waterfall, maybe. 100 is good. Now we have the initial size. This is the particle size. You can set this to 10 for smaller and 20 for larger particles. And as you can see, we have this plus negative field where you can fill for each variable. If I set this to 10, you will see that some particles are larger while some are smaller. Now, this plus negative means the size will change between 20 minus 10, which is 10, and 20 plus 10, which is 30. So particles have the size between 10 to 30 randomly. I will set it to 5. Now particles are more uniform between 15 and 25. Since this will be a fire, I want it to start as a reddish color, then it should get yellow and white color. For starters, in the initial red will stay as 1, but I want the green to be a lower value, so I will set this to 0.2, and I will also set the 0.2 for the blue, maybe 0.1. This is the RGB, you can use them to change the colors. The initial alpha, how transparent the particles will be, I want it to start as 1. We have the rotation, you can set the rotation of particles, but since we are using circles, no need for that. You can set the initial stretch. Now this value is the addition to the initial scale, so you can think of it as 1 plus the initial stretch. Since the initial x scale is 1, if I set this to 1, now the total x scale is 2, so it is scaled by 2 on the x. If I set this to 2, it will be 3 times. I need no stretch, so let's set it back to 0. Again, we have the angular velocity. I will keep it 0 because I don't want my particles to rotate. Since they are circles, it wouldn't be visible anyway. Since we have set the initial values, we have the lifetime variables. Now, I want the particles to start larger and get smaller as time, so here I will toggle on this curve editor button. Now if I go to my curve editor At the bottom, we will see that life scale is present. I will toggle off the life alpha for now. If I scroll up, you will see that the life scale is visible. You can move things around to change their scales, but since I want them to get smaller, I will move it downward. Maybe you didn't like the initial size, so you can just move this up and the initial size will be multiplied by this value. Since we have it around 1.7, the initial size was, I think, 20. So the initial size is set to 34. And you can change the curve of the editor like this. You have one at this side too. And if you click on the line anywhere, which is a bit difficult to click, it will create a new point where you can move around and also change the curve like this. I will move this around a bit to get the effect I want. Okay, this looks acceptable. Now let's continue with the life variables. I don't want the life rate to be changed because it was already 1 at the full effect, but I want the green amount to be increased, so we will have red and green together for a more yellowish color. Our initial green was 0.1, so if I increase the green maybe from 1 to 2, then that means it will be multiplied by 2, so at the end we will have zero point 0.2 for the green, but I want it to get closer to red, so I will increase it a bit more, and I think around 5 we will have a yellowish color. I also want to see white at the very end, so I will toggle on my blue. When a point selected, if you press delete, it deletes the point. You can play with the curve as you like, it is fun and you can get some interesting results. There is also the life alpha that is enabled. The particles disappear towards the end, and I like the way it is set, so I won't change it. You can change the rotation during lifetime, you can change the stretch. I will change the Y stretch a bit because I want the particles to be stretched upward for a more fire-like effect. I think this looks good. You can change it as you like. I will change the life scale a bit so it will look better, and I think they are similar. The colors are not exactly matching. Let me show you what I have here. I didn't change the blue, I guess, on this one. Maybe if I disable the blue here. If you want to disable it, first disable the curve, then set the value you see on here and it will be reset. And that's how you can create a fire effect. I will show you also the explosion, but I will not explain it as much because I think I have explained most things here. Explosion 2. I will start emitting it. For the play mode, let's set it to once. I want the duration to be shorter, so I will set it to 0.1, so it will be more explosive. No need for delay. I will set the emission space to emitter. I don't want it to be affected by world. For the image, I will not use the blob. Instead, I have my image atlas, and on it, I have my rectangle, which is actually a triangle. Now I will set the emitter type to circle, so it will actually explode, but there is hardly any particle on the screen. So let's increase the spawn rate to a higher value, maybe 500. And now it is better. For the particle orientation, right now they are all looking upward. If I set it to movement direction, you will see that particles are looking at where they are going. They are slow, so I will increase their initial speed to 200 maybe. And they move so far, so let's decrease the particle lifetime to zero point 0.7. And now we have a more explosive like particles. Let's change the color. I want the initial color to be red and want it to go from red to black, so I will set the green and blue 0 as initial values, so it starts as red. And I want this to be stretched by 1, not on the X, but on the Y, so the shapes will be longer. Now we have the red enabled. Since both green and blue are set as 0, if I bring my red towards 0, then we should have the black color. I will move it downward, but you will see that the shape is disappearing instead of being black. That's because the mode we are using for the blend. If I change this to alpha, now you will see that we are using our own alpha and the color is being set to black. You can change the other values too. I want the redness to last a bit longer, so I will make this is a more steep curve. You can add a line here, maybe, and move it to the right. While not perfect, this is an explosion. I think here I did the color change a bit better. We have the green change, red and blue. You can use these values. I also have this smoke particle. This is quite simple. I will not show you how you can make this one. You can take this one as an assignment and try to create it yourself. If you encounter any problem, you can ask on the comment section. And since we are done with the particles, I will show you how you can use it on your game with scripts. Now on my main collection, I have created a particle parent for demonstration purposes. On it I have my explosion, fire and smoke particles. Now on the particle starter script, on the init we first acquire input focus, so when I left click or press the fire or delete actions, we will be able to detect them. Now let me show you my input binding. I have F for fire, D for delete, and button left and button right with left and right click. The looping particles do not have a is playing variable. To keep the track of the fire, I have created a is fire lit variable on my self table and set it to false because first it is not being emitted. On the on input, if I press D, then the game object will delete itself, so this particle parent will be deleted. Now I will start the fire and you will see that the explosion is working. With the next explosion I will first left click then press D. Even if I left click or press F, the particles are not being emitted because they are deleted with the particle parent. Even if you delete the emitter, the particles will keep living till their lifetime is finished and they will not disappear. So keep that in mind. If I left click and my action has an X value, that means this is a mouse input, and I add this and action.press to all of them. So the internal part will only be called once. I use particle effects.play to play the explosion. And I also have this emitter state change variable. If after the emitter URL, if you enter a function name here, Then the emitter will be connected to that function. Here we have the local function emitter state change. It has self, ID, emitter, and state. When you connect them, these values are set. On the function, I check if the emitter is explosion emitter. If you want this to work, you will need to change the emitter on the explosion. Smoke and fire has the same name, but for the explosion, I changed the name because we are using it here. So if the function is accessed by the explosion emitter and the state is emitter state post spawn, we have four different state. The post spawn is after the particles are created with the explosion, but they are not disappeared yet. They still are on the scene. We can think this of as emitting finished signal. We have the press spawn, and this one is called before you start spawning the particles. You have the spawning. This is when the particles are being spawned, and the sleeping is the spawn is finished and there is no particles on the scene belonging this emitter. I select the state post spawn because I want the explosion to have some effect after it is done. So here you can set the reduce HP function maybe if you are going to apply any damage to the enemies or the player when an explosion happens. You can use this function to use the particles as a feature more than just visuals. Now, if the action ID is fire, I toggle the is fire lit variable, and if the current state is true, so it's fire lit, then I play the fire and smoke. If it is false, then we'll stop both of them. And that's how you can achieve this effect with your default game. Since this is an introductory tutorial, we will have more advanced ones. I will present more examples that you can use with your game. I will share this project on my itch.io page, so you can go and download it from there. If you have any question, you can ask on the comment section. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.